I'm sure many of you have watched the classic series called Prison Break. Today, we're talking about a real case, the Devil's Island escape. But did anyone actually manage to escape? And if so, how did they do it? Stay tuned until the end to discover the truth. This is the most famous prison escape in history. So, where is Devil's Island located? It's a very famous prison situated on a small island in San Francisco Bay, California. This island was originally called Alcatraz, covering just 0.08 square kilometers. The island is surrounded by steep cliffs with no beaches. The surrounding waters are extremely deep, with the nearest shoreline 2.4 kilometers away. It's the perfect location for a prison, like placing a rock in the sea and building a prison on top of it. That's why this island was also called The Rock. Originally a military base, in 1906, San Francisco was hit by a massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Many buildings collapsed, and the city prison caught fire, forcing authorities to evacuate prisoners. But outside was chaos, and many of these were serious offenders who couldn't just be placed arbitrarily. So they hastily transferred 176 prisoners to the island, where they would pose no danger and couldn't escape. This incident revealed how perfectly suited the island was for a prison. In 1912, the U.S. federal government built a massive prison on the island. From then on, the island's name changed from The Rock to Prison Island. Later, during the 1930s Great Depression in America, organized violent armed criminals appeared everywhere. These criminals were too dangerous for regular prisons because criminal organizations would come to rescue them. But imprisoned on this island, no boat could reach them for rescue. So the island housed all the crime bosses. And what other type of person was imprisoned here? Those who were expert escape artists, people that ordinary prisons couldn't hold. Like Michael Scofield in Prison Break, he would definitely be imprisoned here. And from that point on, the island's name changed once again from Prison Island to Devil's Island. The entire prison had 600 cells. All cells had no windows. All barriers were made from special materials that couldn't be broken with ordinary tools. Guard towers surrounded the prison on all four sides, with armed guards aiming into the prison. The prison was surrounded by iron fencing, making entry from outside impossible. In the prison dining hall, tear gas canisters were embedded in the ceiling, remotely controlled so that if riots occurred, they could be activated from the guard towers. Though called Devil's Island, the environment was actually excellent. Since they only housed the worst criminals, the prisoner population was very small. The 600 cells were never full, guaranteeing one cell per person. The food was exceptionally good, not just filling, but nutritionally complete. Additionally, prisoners with good behavior could read books. There were over 15,000 books available. They could receive musical instruments, study independently, paint, paper, pens, paints, everything could be provided. So with good behavior, life could be quite comfortable. Many prisoners from other facilities even requested transfers here. Since the prison's completion, it was always considered escape-proof due to its unique environment. The island was surrounded by cliffs, with deep, extremely cold waters. Another factor was that the surrounding seas were full of sharks, mainly great whites. Furthermore, the area was patrolled by lighthouses, patrol boats, and guard towers, making escape seemingly impossible. However, since the prison's construction, over 30 people have attempted escape. Of these, 23 were recaptured, 6 were shot dead, and 2 drowned. But in 1962, about 60 years ago, 3 people successfully escaped, or rather vanished. Actually, 4 people attempted the escape, but 1 was recaptured. Let me introduce these 4 people briefly. The first, Frank Morris, was very intelligent. At age 11, he was abandoned by his parents and began committing crimes. At 13, he was arrested for possession of guns and drugs, then later for car theft and armed robbery. Subsequently, he was sentenced to 10 years for bank robbery. After release, he committed burglary, and was arrested again, finally ending up at Devil's Island. The biggest reason for sending him there was his repeated prison breaks, many of which were successful. So before he was admitted, his IQ was tested. It was a stunning 133, one of the highest among inmates. Brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin were country boys, 1 year apart in age, who entered society early. From age 20, they committed crimes continuously, mainly bank robberies. Their final arrest at ages 27 and 28 was for bank robbery. They too were sent to the island because of multiple escape attempts. Finally, Alan West, he began committing crimes at 16. By 28, he'd been arrested 20 times total, spending most of his life in prison or being arrested. He too had escaped many times and was eventually sent to Devil's Island. Besides their common trait of frequent escapes, these 4 men were similar in age and all born during America's Great Depression. Criminal activities like bank robbery seemed quite common in that era. One reason why these 4 ended up planning the escape together was that their prison cells were next to each other. In December 1961, they began planning their escape. The leader and planner was the oldest with the highest IQ, Frank Morris. First, the 4 spent about 6 months preparing tools, including glue, spoons, soap, toothpaste, toilet paper, hair, towels, raincoats, and a vacuum cleaner. You might wonder what these items could possibly be used for. I'll tell you, they all served crucial purposes. First, they gradually stole over 50 prison raincoats, cutting and gluing them together to make a rubber raft. But inflating such a large boat would be extremely difficult. How did they manage? They actually used accordion bellows to inflate it. Frank had excellent behavior and requested an accordion, actually to inflate the boat. Later, it was discovered that Frank frequently visited the library. The magazine he often read contained articles about outdoor survival techniques, including how raincoats could be inflated and sealed to create floating devices. Perhaps this gave him the idea that these could be made into something like a seaworthy boat. They then used raincoat scraps to make 4 life vests and waterproof bags for personal items, plus wooden paddles from collected wood scraps. Thus, their sea transportation equipment was complete. But how to get out of their cells to reach the sea? They stole small metal spoons from the kitchen. Since the walls were concrete, spoons alone were useless, so they stole a vacuum cleaner motor, attached the spoon to it, connected it to the cell's electricity, creating an electric drill. Below the sink was a ventilation hole. They drilled this larger so a person could crawl through. This ventilation hole led to a maintenance corridor for electrical and water systems, similar to the structure in Prison Break. But there was a problem. Their homemade electric drill was very noisy. However, prisoners with good behavior received musical instruments and had designated daily performance time. This was the noisiest time in the prison, so they used this opportunity to drill the walls. They only needed to make the ventilation hole slightly larger for a person to crawl through, so they didn't need to drill every day. Just a few days before the escape. Actually, besides this, they had to do something incredibly important that proved truly ingenious. Evening cell checks would immediately trigger alarms if anyone was missing. Unlike Schofield, Schofield only needs to get over the wall to escape. But these 4 have to get over the wall and across the sea, requiring much more time. So how could they avoid the cell checks? They used soap, toothpaste, concrete, toilet paper, and collected hair to create 4 fake heads, painted with skin-colored paint. Where did they get the paint? Since well-behaved prisoners could paint, one of them requested art supplies. They placed these heads on their beds with towels underneath, making it look like sleeping prisoners. After everything was prepared, on the evening of June 11, 1962, they began their escape. The plan: exit through the ventilation hole, follow the maintenance corridor to stairs leading to the roof, climb to the kitchen roof, descend through a chimney to ground level, then follow the cliffs down to the sea and inflate their boat. Of the 4, only Alan West couldn't get out. Why? When initially drilling his ventilation hole, he made it slightly too large. A few days earlier, having finished drilling, he feared discovery and patched it with cement. By escape day, the cement had hardened. He couldn't use the drill without making loud noises, so he spent hours digging by hand. When he finally got out, the other three were long gone. Since it was already dawn, he returned the same way and went back to sleep. The fake heads fooled the guards during cell checks, so the escape wasn't discovered until morning roll call. Seeing the prisoners still sleeping, guards poked the heads with batons. The heads fell to the floor, terrifying the guards. Later, police had to admire how realistic the heads looked. After discovering the three missing prisoners, police found a hole in West's cell. West confessed everything and cooperated fully with the search for the other three, so he received no additional punishment. Due to the delayed discovery, after 10 days of searching, they only found one paddle at sea, identical to what West would have carried. They also found 2 life vests made from raincoats, one in the bay and one outside it, floating undamaged. They discovered a waterproof bag made from raincoats containing items belonging to the Anglin brothers, photos of them and their relatives and friends, plus a paper with contact information for friends and family, all found intact. This showed they'd spent considerable time preparing. The inflatable raft was never found, but some raincoat fragments were discovered, leading to speculation that the boat had broken apart and been scattered by waves. If the raft had burst, their escape success rate would be very slim. Why? The waves around this area are extremely large, especially when they depart at night. Even in June, the seawater temperature was only 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Just 10 minutes in the water would cause muscle cramps, dropping body temperature and shock, ultimately leading to drowning or freezing to death. Additionally, sharks are active at night. If injured during escape, they could easily become shark targets. Even if they reached shore successfully, the other side wasn't deserted. It was a bustling, populated area. Escaped prisoners in prison uniforms swimming ashore would be spotted, as police also patrolled there. But after extensive investigation and inquiries, no one saw anyone in prison uniforms or suspicious individuals coming ashore, so police concluded they must have been swallowed by the sea. But the search never stopped, and wanted posters were issued everywhere. 6 months after this escape, another Devil's Island prisoner escaped. John Paul Scott had no boat or tools. He simply swam across. After reaching shore, he lost consciousness from hypothermia and was found by a child who immediately called police. When police arrived and recognized the escaped prisoner, they arrested him. Scott's successful swim made police suddenly think the earlier three might have made it, since they had a boat and life vests, while Scott had nothing. Moreover, Scott swam 6 months later in December, the coldest time, yet still made it across. Police suddenly remembered that during their investigation, other prisoners had said the Anglin brothers were extremely healthy, athletic talents, good at every sport. Investigation revealed they came from a coastal area and were likely swimming champions. This made the Anglin brothers' escape success rate very high. Not long after Scott's escape, the prison closed. From 1972, it became a tourist destination. The famous movie, The Rock, was filmed here. The investigation made no progress for over 50 years until 2013, when San Francisco police suddenly received a letter. The writer claimed to be John, one of the Anglin brothers. John wrote that, "The three of us successfully escaped and lived together for some time." He said, "If you agree to put this story on the news, I'll tell you where I am. I could even return to prison, but for at most 1 year, and you must agree to provide medical treatment." Police considered it a fake letter and ignored it. But later, John's nephew spoke up, saying he knew the three had indeed survived and lived together until 1975, 13 years together. To prove his claims, in 2016 he provided police with a photograph. The two people in the photo were his uncles, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. The photo was actually taken in 1975 in Brazil. Police sent the photo to experts for analysis. They determined it was likely authentic. But the nephew didn't know their whereabouts. He said Uncle John was probably still alive, Clarence probably deceased, and he knew nothing about Frank. This could perfectly explain why they weren't discovered for so long. They had gone to Brazil. The nephew's mother, sister to John and Clarence Anglin, also confirmed to police that for 3 years after their escape, the brothers sent Christmas cards to their mother every year. The cards had no postmarks, but bore the Anglin brothers' signatures, indicating they had survived. Police later released documents confirming that during the 1960s investigation, they had suspected the escapees fled to Brazil. To this day, San Francisco police are still searching for these escapees. If still alive, the Anglin brothers would be about 94, 95 years old, and Frank would be 97, 98. Did they really lose their lives in the ocean? Or are they still living in hiding somewhere far away? No one knows for sure, and perhaps that's exactly what makes this prison break one of the most thrilling mysteries in American history. Thank you for watching. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to catch more strange and fascinating stories. Like and leave comments below so we can discuss these events together. Goodbye, and see you again.